Can we get a quick show of hands for folks that have played with PowerShell before? It's about everybody in the room. All right. Quick show of hands of folks that are familiar with Power CLI. It's also about everybody in the room. So why a one-on-one session then? Right?
Yeah. Everybody wants to see Glenn. That's the reason you're here. I know that. So I got one final question because it's kind of pertinent to this conversation. We're going to start real low and we're very rapidly going to go to the top. How many people have 10 VMs? 100? 1,000? 10,000? Your hand should still be up, sir. Okay.
Over 10,000. That actually kind of plays right into this. So Power CLI is one of those things that, in saving time, right? If you can do it on one VM, you can do it on 10 VMs, all the way up to however many you have, right?
Yeah, so this whole thing kind of starts with, why should I be automating anyways? If you go to the solutions floor, there's 1,000 vendors down there that are going to show you a dashboard, a web page. They've got the tool to make your problem go away. Unfortunately, the sad truth is the best tools in the world aren't going to work in every environment. It's impossible, right? At the end of the day, in order for you guys to be really successful, you're going to have to be tool builders. You're going to have to write your own solutions. And automation is the means by which you become successful in this business, particularly in this field, because unlike every other field, you guys have scale. You have real scale problems. You deal with numbers that the average administrator just doesn't even comprehend. A good Windows admin right now is 10 servers. Good Linux admin is 100. A VI admin, 500 VMs is a starting point. Right? So automation. Why automate? 3 big things. Number 1, save time. Once you write a script, that's the last time you ever have that problem. The problem goes away. You just run the script, done. Reduce risk. Human beings are messy. They make mistakes. Scripts don't. And even when a script does make a mistake, it makes the same mistake the same way every single time. So it's predictable.
Which you actually also have to be really careful about because you can go from like 0 to resume producing really quickly. But PowerShell and Power CLI have some built-in features we'll get to in a few slides that actually protect you from yourself.
The final reason you guys need to be automating is scale. That's why we went through that real quick demonstration. It really is, it's unique. It's a unique problem set to have. When you start scripting in these environments, milliseconds start to matter just because the sheer number of objects you're performing your operation against. It's not unusual to have a script that runs for a couple hours just because the sheer mass of information it's got to churn through. So what are we going to do today? Well, we're going to start off with a brief introduction to PowerShell itself. This is fundamental stuff. If you don't understand PowerShell, Power CLI is not going to make a lot of sense, unfortunately. And we're going to go over 3 scenarios. Now, these scenarios are intended to mirror what your day might be. All right, we're going to start with a day of vCenter management. We'll go into a day of dealing with storage. And then we'll finish up with some virtual machine provisioning. This is an introductory level presentation. Right? It's intended to be. If you've got experience with Power CLI, a lot of the stuff is going to look familiar to you. But if you come from a different scripting language, you'll be able to connect the dots. Give me this damn thing. So first things first, we've got to cover some terminology because Microsoft decided to do something interesting when they developed PowerShell. They wanted uniqueness, specifically Google juice. It was kind of a smart decision on their part. The first term we're going to go over today is called a commandlet. It's literally pronounced commandlet, and that is spelled correctly. It was done that way on purpose, so that when you put CMD-LET into any search engine, you're only going to get PowerShell results. It's a quick and easy way to filter out all the noise that's on the internet. Commandlets have rules. Those rules are there to protect you and to help you. They drive developers insane. Commandlets have a very strict naming convention. They can't get inventive. They will always be verb-singular noun. Vendor prefix is optional. VMware does not provide a vendor prefix. There's a finite set of verbs. They can't just make stuff up. For instance, the commandlet to vmotion a virtual machine is move-vm. Why? Because they're not allowed to use vmotion-vm. Now, why do you care about that? You know about vmotion. Vmotion's a good verb for you. Well, that's true. Except you're dealing with a tool that was built to handle the entire portfolio. Right? Microsoft they've got their 60,000 developers behind this. They've put it in their common engineering criteria. If you want to ship, you need to support it. And they've got this standard. So what does that mean? Well, that means that if you adopt PowerShell as a tool in your toolkit, you are instantly going to get access to all that work. And any knowledge that you get from working with Power CLI is going to transfer to Exchange or Windows Server or SQL Server or the other vendor stacks, because they're also getting on board. Cisco this year released the UCS module for administering UCS from PowerShell.
Basically, if you walk around the show floor, and if anybody's had a product that's been in the market for more than 2 or 3 years, ask them if they've got Power CLI commandlets or PowerShell commandlets. Chances are they will. Right? Varying levels of maturity, but they'll have commandlets.
Another thing that's unique about commandlets, and Cody mentioned it earlier, they have what's known as the common parameter set. There are 4 parameters that are on every single commandlet in PowerShell. They come for free. The developer writes absolutely nothing. The engine provides them. They're debug, verbose, what if, and confirm.
What if is the don't get fired one?
What if is your friend. When you start playing with this stuff, that is going to be your get out of jail free card. No matter what the commandlet is, if you apply -what if to the end of it, it's not going to do anything. It's going to tell you what it would have done had it done something. So it's a safe way to test a script. Confirm is the same output as what if, the only difference being it asks you in between each prompt and you say yes or no. And then verbose is the same thing, except it just runs silently in the background and gives you a detailed output of what it's doing. Microsoft had the advantage of coming to an automation platform late. The inventor of PowerShell likes to say that he's digging Microsoft out of a 30-year hole. The Linux community has had a real automation strategy since its very inception. Microsoft had a GUI.
And they had VBScript.
Yeah, VBScript.
How many folks have worked with VBScript?
I'm sorry.
I would like to apologize on behalf of Microsoft for what was VBScript.
So the next term that we need to really kind of grasp and understand is objects. And just about every other scripting language out there, you're dealing with strings. And your job basically becomes the following. Run something that gets some information, and then parse that sucker. Figure out how, either through grep or awk or splits or substrings or all the various ugly ways that you get text out, particularly regular expressions, for those of you who've had that joy. That's the majority of your time. Right? You very quickly go from what I call the problem domain. I've got a problem. I'm trying to solve it. My hair's on fire. I've got to fix a customer issue, to scripting. I'm trying to figure out how to get this text to parse or how to make this loop do what I want it. The whole concept of objects is to remove all of that. Even when you do have text in PowerShell, it's not text. It's a proper .NET system.string object. It has properties like length, how many characters are in it. It has methods like split, which will split on white space, or you can give it a delimiter and it'll split on the delimiter. Everything in PowerShell is an object. Everything. And then finally, we've got the real beauty of this thing, and what the PowerShell community at large has.
So, how many folks have used the pipeline in Power CLI thus far? Okay, so for the rest of you who haven't used it, prepare to have your minds blown. All right, it is the power behind PowerShell.
Yeah, it's the crown jewel. Pipelines are nothing new. Linux has had them forever. The difference is in old Linux and even in DOS prompts, what the pipeline did is it just linked std in to std out, or vice versa. And then the executable that you were calling then had to know how to do that text parsing for you. In PowerShell, what the pipeline does is it carries these objects from commandlet to commandlet almost like a conveyor belt. And then in the background, it does what's known as parameter binding. Parameter binding is a method by which a commandlet will grab the information it needs to do whatever you're asking it to do off the object that it just received from PowerShell. So what does this mean to you? You type less. Well, why do you care? The only statistic that we really know about any kind of programming, right? All the studies that have been done about TDD and BDD and Agile and all that stuff, the only stat that we really know to be true is the number one determining factor of bugs is the sheer number of lines of code. The more stuff you type, the greater the chance you're going to make a mistake. That's the fact. What does the pipeline do? It removes a tremendous amount of code. Yeah. Right? The old joke, with the exception of William Lamb, who's the only person I've ever met who's claimed to be able to get Perl to be more verbose or more terse than PowerShell. You know, the average Perl script is about 100 lines of code. Your average PowerShell script's 10. So what does that mean? 10 times less bugs, 10 times less time wasted on bugs, more time you staying in the problem domain and getting your problems done. So those are our key terms. The other one that's not on here at the moment is there are two delivery methods to bring commandlets into a PowerShell prompt. There's what's known as a snap-in. A snap-in was in the first version of PowerShell. They called it a snap-in because it's based off the Microsoft Management Console, the MMC. The MMC has snap-ins. They thought the term would be familiar to administrators. The problem with snap-ins, you had to install them. They were kind of heavy. You know, the PowerShell team took a look at it, and when they released PowerShell v2, they introduced something called modules. Modules are a direct ripoff of CPAN and Perl. They're Xcopy deployable. They're not installed. You can put them in a roaming profile on a UNC share. All you got to do is be able to find the DLL or the script file, and it'll come in. So our pipeline. Here we've got what we commonly refer to in PowerShell as a one-liner. One line of code that gets something done for you. We're going to get all the virtual machines, and we're going to filter them. Where the power state is powered off, I want you to start it, and then just output it to format table. That's the pipeline running. So some key commandlets. Some stuff.
These will help you out of just about any situation you might find yourself in.
Yeah, I call these the training wheels. This is what enables you to be able to work with anything.
And everything.
This is why you can take your Power CLI experience, walk into an Exchange environment, sit down and start typing, because they're going to get you out of jail. The first of which is get command. What does get command do? It gets you all the commands in the system. If I could type this morning. All right, there's a lot of them. What else will it do? Well, you can ask it questions. You can say, you know what, hey, get command, do you have any commands that deal with virtual machines? Oh, look, there they are. It'll also return any DLLs, executables, anything on the system. There's a lot of verbose information in here that'll tell you what's going on in the background. Again, this is that example of objects. You know, when I hit enter, I saw 3 properties, and it looked like that's all that was there. But upon inspection, I see, no, there's actually a lot of information on that object. The next key commandlet is get help. Quite frankly, get command, the vision was you're going to find a command with get command, and then you're going to get the help with get help. But in V2, they introduced a searching feature, which almost makes it as if you can live on get help alone. In addition to just having an extremely rich help subsystem, again, the PowerShell team had the advantage of...
Herp? Get herp? You fixed it, but...
In addition to having the advantage of learning from those that came before them, they stole from everybody. When they wrote this language, they stole from Perl, they stole from Lisp, they stole from everybody. If they saw a language that did something better than one of theirs, they just took it. They said, oh, I'm going to take that and use it. So from Linux, they stole man pages. Oop. Every commandlet in PowerShell has this incredibly verse help system. with very detailed information about every single command. Now, what does that mean? That means that when you're in the data center on a KVM and you have a PowerShell prompt up, you have access to what you need to find the answer. You don't need the internet to use this tool. It's self-documenting. You can also just ask it a question. Here I gave it the name of a commandlet, but I can also just say, hey, get help. Not HA primary horse. I'm looking for anything that deals with a switch. Can you help me? What it did there is it searched through everything it had. You notice how it found 7 commandlets and a help file. Those are two completely different systems in PowerShell. The about pages are PowerShell's way of doing detailed documentation. There's a lot of really good ones that'll, about signing tells you about script signing, about if will tell you about logical operators and that kind of jazz.
And it'll also search through all of the commandlets that you have imported on your system. So we've got some from VMware, some from the NetApp commandlet set. It will find everything.
So it's a self-documenting system. It's a way for you to find answers. My favorite feature of it, though, is the following. Unlike a man page where you have to just kind of pipe through that joker trying to get to what you're looking for, you can just tell this exactly what I want. So, for instance, we'll do get help. Let's look at the switch FCP
You'll note
port
that
name.
he only types like 3/4 of the commandlet and then hits tab. PowerShell also has a really rich tab completion.
Yeah, everything is tab completion. So I can say, get help. What's this switch NAFCP port name? Show me examples of this thing running. Oh, looky there. I didn't have to scroll through anything. It just went straight to the example of the code. Very rich. Save time.
Save time. Drink water.
Yeah, save time. Drink water. Drink water. Our next key commandlet is get module. Again, we've got two different ways to import commandlets into PowerShell. We've got snap-ins and modules. I'm going to cover get module because modules are the future. The next version of Power CLI will be a module. The current version is a snap-in. But everything we do with get module, you can do a snap-in. The only difference is it's PS snap-in instead of module. So what can we do? Well, if I just run get module, it's going to show the modules that are currently loaded into my session. Here I have 2 script modules. These are open source, community-provided code. Again, modeled after CPAN. And then I've got the compiled module for the Data on Tap PowerShell toolkit. But what I can also do is I can just ask the question, hey, what do you know about get module? What's on here? All that. I can also just say, let's see what this does. I don't know why that's not working.
Now. We went too long with dead air.
Yeah.
The FCC is going to cancel the radio show, all right? Fines are going through the roof.
So I don't know what I broke, but that should have worked. That should have imported every single module and given me a little bit over 3,000 commandlets. That's 3,000 lines of code and single units of administrative function that I don't have to write, that I don't have to produce.
It's also the danger of doing live demos at a huge conference like this.
Oh, see?
Who was that? I think he deserves a book.
He does deserve a book. Where are you, so kind sir? Give that man a book.
I has a book for you. Yep. So if we screw up along the way and any of y'all catch us, right?
So thank you. I had a brain dump there. It threw a couple of errors just because I already had some modules and some format files loaded. But I exploded from 200 commands to 1,291. Right, and that's just what I have on this laptop. The PowerShell community is somewhere in the neighborhood of 10,000 commandlets right now if you count all the community-driven stuff.
Note the measure object. It's not one of our key commandlets, but you will find yourself using it all the time. Boss says, how many VMs do I have? Get VM, measure object. How many snapshots are there? Get VM, get snapshot, measure object. it'll tell you exactly how many of whatever is returned.
So the last two commandlets that we're going to cover are getMember and formatList, and they both do the same thing. PowerShell is written in .NET. .NET has this really neat feature called reflection. Reflection is a method by which an object can describe itself to the caller. It can tell it about it. These are my properties. These are my methods. Again, everything's an object, right? So if I run getProcess, which will get all the processes running on my local machine, and then I pipe that into getMember, I get the following. I get the type name. This is a system.diagnostics.process. I can see that there are some alias properties put in here. Alias properties are just links. It's a way for you to get to a property typing less information. I've got events and methods and note properties and all this rich information.
Is that an eye exam for anyone else?
But the reason I bring this up is when I just run getProcess, I see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 columns. Now, why is that? Well, it turns out that these are the 7 columns you care about the most. And 9 times out of 10, this is going to be the last bit of information you want, and all you're going to want to see is these 7. This is also true in PowerCLI. As you use the tool, there's what's known as formatter files. We filter the output. We remove stuff. Why? We're trying to give you the quick, concise, glanceable information that you're looking for. But you need to take a look at these objects because they're very rich and there's a ton of information in there. Especially in VMware's case, because starting with PowerCLI 4.1 and continuing on with vSphere 5, they embed the actual .NET object into the implementation object. So it's a shortcut into the entire extensibility engine. You know, the get VM commandlet, if you drill all the way into the object that Joker returns, you're dealing with over 1,000 properties. Anything you've ever wanted to know about a virtual machine is there. The problem is when you just hit enter, it shows you 5. So getMember is your shortcut to figuring out what's actually on that object. Now, as we saw earlier, the only problem with getMember, it doesn't show you what the values are. And sometimes you don't really know what you're looking for, so a property name doesn't help you. For instance, if you're trying to figure out what property in PowerCLI shows me how much RAM a VM has, well, an easy shortcut for doing that is to, well, just look at a VM. You know, VM01 has 1024 megs of RAM. Okay, so now I'm just going to get VM and I'm going to look for 1024. And that's going to be my quick way to find it. So if getMember doesn't do that, what will? The answer is formatList. If I take any object and I pipe it to formatList, I actually never typed the whole command, I always used the shortcut. It's going to show me the actual information that's coming back, and as you can see, there's a whole lot of it. So that's our crash course in PowerShell itself. Right? This is just training wheels. This is barely scratching the surface. You know, PowerShell is many things to many people. If you're a developer, it looks like the most rich development language you've ever come across. If you're a scripter, it's your dream come true. If you just like typing commands on a command line, it's a better command prompt. Get off the bus where you feel comfortable. If you don't want to script, don't. You don't have to. You want to write rich programs? You can. It's your choice.
Okay, so who actually wants to start building some stuff?
Go.
All right. So while he's queuing up the video, we're going to go through a live demo of growing an environment. So basically you started with one ESX host. You decided you liked virtualization. You bought a second ESX host. You bought a license for Virtual Center. We really need to make this stuff start working, right? So first things first, we're going to connect to the Virtual Center we've got. We're going to use the credentials. We've stored them out in a file just because the environment is like ultra secure, as you'll see in a couple of seconds here. Did you pause?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, so that is actually running in the background. So we pre-recorded these because we found out that the wireless here really sucks. So the next thing we're doing is, now that we're connected, we're grabbing a data center, or we're creating a variable data center, and then we're going to create that data center. Glenn called it Bellevue. You can call it whatever you want, right? Whatever matches your particular preference. And this is all, you'll notice the Virtual Center in the background, it's going to start building out as we go. because these are all basically right-click, new data center, we're just replicating, right? And then we're doing location get folder. So get folder in Virtual Center gets us the root folder of that Virtual Center. Wow. Breathe more often, right? Once we've created that data, well, there we go, right? Just unpause the video and let you watch it. So for reference, when he did record these, it was over hotel Wi-Fi, over 2 or 3 VPN hops, right? So the lesson there is, PowerShell is robust enough that your latency doesn't really matter, right? Fire and forget kind of thing. So now that we've created it, and you see the Bellevue data center up there, we're going to go ahead and add host. And then we're pulling out the DNS name. We're taking that location that we just created. So the reason we store it in a variable is because we're using it again. And we're going to use our ultra secure root password of blank. Told you, the environment's like really secure, right? And you'll note the tasks down here. It added the standalone host. You can see the expandable, or Bellevue is now expandable. The host is there. And it's sort of parsing through the various bits of, installing the vCenter agent and so on. Maybe. That's a lot more dead air than we anticipated, right?
No, it's okay. So a common question is, why would I script this? This is easy. This is pretty easy to do in VI Client. And the answer to that is it depends, again, on your scale. If you're only adding one host, use VI Client. I don't really care. It's up to you, right? But the second you get over doing something 10 times, period, ever in the life of the project, you need to script it.
Yeah.
That's the demarcation point. If you're ever going to add 10 hosts, just script it.
How many of you have had, like 5 or 6 servers show up from Dell and your project deadline was last week? Yeah. So that gets you out, that gets them all added, and, you still get to go home, hang out with your family, right? There's our task returned, CPU megahertz, the memory and the host, and so on. Next, we went ahead and created the cluster, new cluster, VMworld location in that same data center we created, right? And the next thing we're doing here is we are enabling HA on the cluster, we are enabling DRS on the cluster, and we're telling it to don't question us. There's that confirm parameter, right? Don't question us, we're professionals. That and it makes for a much faster demo.
Yeah, the note about confirm real quick, guys. PowerShell is not chatty. It doesn't talk to you just because it feels like it. If you get a prompt in this thing, you need to read it because you're about to do something that, as Cody likes to say, could be a resume-producing event.
Yep. So the next thing we're doing here is the host we just added to Virtual Center, our host that we had 800 VMs on already. We're moving it into the cluster that we created, and there it goes. Next, that new host that showed up, we're going to go ahead and put that in the cluster too. Again, super secret, right? Root and no password. You'll note we're using the force parameter and run async. Force is basically telling it to, have you ever had those annoying SSL notifications pop up in VI Client? Yeah, this makes that kind of not ask you about it, right? And then run async is another way of doing fire and forget. So we're going to run this command. We just want to run it, get our command back so we can continue doing work. And there's that one. So what did we do? We created a new data center. We added a host and its virtual machines to the virtual center. We created a cluster. We put the host in the cluster. And we used a bunch of commandlets. Connect VI server, new data center, add VM host. You see the verb noun there, right? It all reads like plain English, right? And for those of you with cell phone cameras, that's the code we actually used. And now I changed the slide randomly because everyone's got their cameras up. All right, you ready for yours? All right. So
oh my God, I need storage. Anyone ever ran out of storage? 9 o'clock at night? Had VMs, wouldn't power on? Totally screwed. Was I the only one? Really?
Come on. Show of hands for folks that have blown up their environment by running out of storage. That snapshot that ran for 35 days longer than it should have?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
So here's the good news. When it comes to Power CLI, there are two things that it is phenomenal at. Virtual machine management and storage management. There's some weak spots with networking. The other good news, I'm going to say thanks to NetApp. Full disclaimer, I work for NetApp. But thanks to NetApp, just about every storage vendor on the expo floor has PowerShell support for you. That includes EMC, Compellent, HP, 3PAR. They're all shipping it.
Walk around the floor, anyone that's had a product for more than a couple of years. Heck, there's even some that are like in the new solutions area that have launched with APIs and PowerCLI or PowerShell commandlets rather.
Yeah.
So everybody and their brother has it. It's the best and easiest way to start automating like all the various aspects of your environment.
Again, I'm biased, but if you want to see how it's done correctly, go check out the NetApp solution. So what do we got? Well, we're dealing with an environment where we've got ourselves in a lot of trouble here. As you can see, we've got 1 gig of free space. I've got 3 virtual machines that will not power on because there's not enough space for the swap file. So what am I going to do? Well, the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go for the cheap win. I'm going to see if there's some large snapshots. Hopefully I forgot one, because that's going to be the quickest and easiest way for me to recover storage. Well, how do I do that? Going back to what Cody mentioned earlier, a sign of properly configured, well-implemented PowerShell is that it reads like a proper English sentence. Again, I mentioned problem domain earlier. This is what I'm referring to. This is not scripting. This is taking your problem and putting it into words and then having an engine give you an answer. Get virtual machine. I want to get all the VMs. For those VMs, I want you to get every snapshot on the system. I want you to sort them by the size in megabytes, descending, meaning give me the biggest one on the top, and then format a table showing me the virtual machine, the name of the snapshot, and the size in megabytes. That's your problem. You just ask the question, and then PowerShell goes off and it does its thing.
Yeah.
I'm going to cheat.
And it continues to do its thing.
Yay!
There we go.
So here we see that I got lucky. I've completely forgotten about a snapshot that someone created on a SQL server, and it's got a 7 gig snapshot.
Oops. Sorry.
Big oops. So what are we going to do here? Well, we're going to delete it. How do we delete it? Again, staying in the problem domain, not scripting. I want to get the snapshot, named updates on the virtual machine SQL 01. That's going to get that snapshot object. I want to pipe that into a remove snapshot, and I'm going to tell it to run asynchronously.
There's that fire and forget again. You don't want to be sitting. So 7 gigs is easy. If it were 70 gigs, right? If it were 700 gigs, you wouldn't want to sit here all night waiting for your PowerCLI prompt to come back, right? We're going to fire and forget. Note the task. Come on.
Yeah, you can. There are 2 things you can do with tasking. There's a commandlet called get task, wait task, built in, whole task subsystem. But you can also, as I like to do, just fire it off and monitor it in VI client. I use VI client as a heads up. It's a panel, right? I administer my environment from PowerCLI.
Oh, here we go. Are you sure you don't want to get fired, right? So basically, we're doing something destructive. PowerShell wants to know, do we really want to do this, right? Do you know what's in that snapshot? Do you know what updates to the schema the DBAs did to the database before we make it go away? Do you know what the I/O is? Are you going to cause an outage by doing this? We're going to go ahead and just make sure it goes away, right?
So that's great. We found a cheap win. We're going to get ourselves out of the critical, but even then we're only going to have 8 gigs of storage. That's not enough. So what are we going to do? Well, we're going to leverage the ecosystem. Now, we were smart and we bought a NetApp array, so we can go and we can import the data ONTAP PowerShell module.
Or an EMC array and the EMC module, or any other vendor out on the floor and their module.
5 commandlets in that joker. So we're going to connect to our NetApp controller, and we're going to, again, staying in the problem domain. What do we want to do? We want to provision storage. So I'm going to create a new NetApp volume. I'm going to name it VM Data 1. I'm going to put it in aggregate 1. I'm going to thin provision it, no space guarantee, and it's going to be 10 terabytes. I'm also, because I can, I'm going to turn on dedupe. So I'm going to take that object and pipe it directly in. One pipeline, one command. I'm going to say, set the dedupe schedule to automatic, meaning run every time 20% change has occurred. I'm then going to turn it on, enable it, and then I'm going to start it. Why? Because it's an empty volume. Dedupe will run in about 5 seconds, and now we're fully provisioned. We don't have to worry about any lock blocks and snapshots.
That's a lot of words.
It's complicated technology.
It's still a lot of words.
It is. So then we're going to pipe that in to get in a Q tree and set the Q tree style to Unix. Now, did that have to be one line of code? No, that could have been 8 lines. And this is up to you. It's your preference. I know PowerShell guys that are obsessed with getting everything on one line, and they'll use semicolons and and they'll get kind of crazy with it. If that's your style, go ahead.
Yeah, taking one-liners to an extreme, though, can reduce your readability and your usability later. For the sake of the demo, right, it's still pretty readable. You can kind of tell what we're doing here, even though it spans onto 2 lines.
So there we go. We've provisioned our storage, and we created an NFS export, exporting that storage path to our NFS VLAN. So the next step is going to be adding that data store into vCenter itself. By the way, just for the record, that was 2 lines of code. We provisioned 8 terabytes. It took about 2 minutes. I don't care what your GUI is, including the one that we give you. It's not that good.
Yep. And note the tasks in the heads up here, right? We actually added the data stores to said hosts.
Yeah, so stop. Coming back up here, we can see, well, what do we do? Again, just proper English sentence. What are you trying to do? Get it down and then just let the engine do the work for you. Well, I want to get all the virtual machines that are inside the cluster that we created, and I want to add a data store to them.
Get all the hosts, not the VMs. Come on.
Okay, I want to get all the hosts. So I'm going to get the cluster VMworld. I'm then going to get every single host inside that cluster, and then I'm going to add my new data store into that. All right, one line of code, and then we saw them pop in, and here's our storage. It's available. It's presented. We're ready to go. So since we're still really tight on space, what are we going to do? Well, let's just SV motion some VMs into that new data store. We'll free up space in the existing one, fire up our VMs that won't start. Problem goes away. We get to go home at 5 o'clock.
Well, except you generally want to schedule SV motioning your Exchange servers. Again, that whole performance, latency, right?
It works.
Because we've all got the spindles to make it happy, right? All right, so what did we do?
We found and removed large snapshots. We added additional storage to our environment. We SV motioned some VMs.
Note the really slick PowerPoint Visio. It's Mr. Glenn's doing.
And there's the script. Yes, it's code. But
it's not.
Anyone who comes from a scripting background, anyone who's worked with VBScript, Bash, guys, you're all going to agree with me. That's not code. Compared to what we're used to dealing with, it's very elegant. And every single time you see that pipe character, that vertical pipe, that's what we meant when we said the pipeline's your friend. It's what's going to enable this stuff. It's what makes it all click. That's what we were referring to.
Okay. So the next one, right? How many folks get requests daily, weekly, monthly, whatever, to add new VMs, right? Yeah, that's what we're doing. As the video gets queued up, right? Pow, there it is. So, again, we connect up using our super secret credential file. We're going to, because we're going to use the VM host thing more than once, we're going to go ahead and get the first host in the cluster. Again, reads like English, right? Get cluster, name VMworld, get my VM host, and then I want the first one out of that list, right? Am I paused? I am paused.
No, you're playing.
Do-do-do-do-do-do-do-do. How long does that take? Right? So generally,
4 round trips across the country. Come
yeah,
on.
this is going like VPN to VPN over a really crummy hotel wireless. There we go. So what are we going to do? We're going to create a new virtual machine. We're actually going to clone a VM, right? So the request came in from the ops guys. Hey, we need to do some QA testing on the database server, and we also need some of the web heads. So we're going to take care of the database server request first. We're going to clone that database server. So new VM, name, right? We're going to give it SQL03 clone so that we can identify it later. We're going to tell it the source VM, SQL03, and that VM host that we got in the first line, that's where we're going to place it. When we power it on, DRS will take care of moving it about because, 2 demos back we enabled DRS. And then we're going to run it async. So there's our task. It's creating the clone. All right, next up, we need to create some webheads for them. So what we're going to do is we're going to make a vanilla VM. New VM, awesome because, Power CLI is awesome, right? Come on. I know it's 8 a.m. All right, same VM host. We're going to let DRS take care of it. We're going to give it a disk of about 60 gigs, some memory. Maybe. There we go. So we're creating the first one. Note the progress bar. Right? It's kind of quasi-correlates with the progress bar down below.
Yeah, on a local LAN, you're going to see them move together because it's the same exact subsystem that's keeping track.
Yep. So what we're going to do now is we're going to turn it into a template. Right? Say we've installed it. Windows is up. It's awesome. So what we're going to do, again, because we're doing something that might be resume producing, the confirmation, and we're going to turn that VM that we've just built into a template. For those that have worked with clones and templates, we're flipping that bit that, changes it to a template. And there we go. So now that we have that, what are we going to do next? Well, they wanted 6 of these webheads so they could mimic their load-balanced environment. They're still going to query the database server. Really long demo is really long. Wow. All right, so show of hands that have liked what you've seen so far. All right.
Well, that's good.
Have we addressed some problems that you all have today, that you all have had to deal with? All right. So what we're going to do now is we're going to do a force multiplier. So we're going to take, damn it, I thought I paused that.
You're complaining about how slow it's going.
Yeah, right. First it starts going slow, then it picks up really, really fast on you, all right? So we're going to take and we're going to make a list of the numbers 1 to 6. This is more for the demo's sake than actually anything really of value. You can do it's the same as doing a for I equals 1 to 6 loop kind of thing. And then we're going to take that 1 to 6, pass it to a for each object. So we're going to loop through that 6 times. We're going to create a new VM. We're going to name it VM, whatever that number is. We're going to use the template we created. We're going to use that first host, and we're going to fire and forget. And you'll see here that, as the tasks come back, clone virtual machine, right? It's going to get through all 6 of them. It's going to kick off the tasks, tell us when it started them. This is really valuable. So if you're creating 600, 6,000, right? Don't know why you'd create 6,000 all at once, but if you needed to, right? You get the tasks, and then because we've knocked off so many of them, you can come back later with get task and monitor the progress. Because trying to find them in the, if you've got a busy virtual center, finding them in the list is going to be entertaining at best. I said 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Number 6 will be coming anytime now and embarrass me again, right? There it is. So the next thing we do is they're all done with the testing. So what are we going to do? We're going to get our clone that we just made, that name clone to distinguish it, and we're going to remove it. And we're going to remove it with a chainsaw, right? Delete permanently. We're going to make the disk go away. Again, because we might be getting fired for it, it's going to ask, are we really sure we want to do that? We're professionals. We know what we're doing, right? And it's a lab environment. Who cares? And there's your progress bar. I think that's it for that demo, right?
Yeah, so those are three different possible days that you might have, right? Instantiating a new environment, provisioning storage to an existing environment.
How many people have those problems on 3 different days? All right, how many people have those problems in like 3 different hours? Yeah. So, instead of going and fixing it through the VI client and digging through your environment and so on, this gives you a really, really quick way out. So what did we do? We cloned a VM, we created a new VM, we changed it to a template, we deployed a whole bunch of virtual machines, and then we deleted the VM when we were done. We went ahead and used a bunch of brand new commandlets. There goes the cell phone cameras. Show of hands when you're ready. Okay. And of course, there's the code we used.
All right, so to round it out, we're going to bring it home with some resources.
Yep.
You don't have to, there'll be a slide at the very end that summarizes all this stuff. But this is just real quick to give you a heads up of what we're dealing with. If you're brand new to PowerShell and you want something to help you get going, I'm going to recommend Don Jones's book, Learn PowerShell in a Month of Lunches. It's the best one out there. It's set up so that you do one exercise a day. They're 30 minutes apiece. And after 30 days, you'll be able to sit down and you know what you're doing.
Yep. And then there's also this book here. It is in the library downstairs also. It is well, I'm not going to let him plug his own book. I'm going to plug it for him, right? It is a Power CLI Bible of sorts, right? Any problem you may have, they've addressed it in the book. We have two of the authors also sitting in the audience.
Yeah, stand Alan, up. Luke, stand up. Come on, stand up.
Come on.
Get up. Okay, so Alan is the tech marketing engineer for Power CLI, and Luke has answered your question on the communities.
The man does not sleep. He's a robot.
He sleeps 4 hours. He told me once. So those are your books. If you're looking for a blog, again, I'm going back to my two main men right here. Luke D's Notes. This is where he posts his high-level stuff. You want to find that killer script, this is where you're going to find it. Recently, he released one for doing your memory allocation for VRAM licensing. It was a lifesaver, and the entire world lit up with it. Virtual.net, Alan Murnoff's blog. Here you're going to find the vHealthCheck script, which you should all be running. If you're not, shame on you. Run that joker. It is
not only are you going to want to run it, you're going to want to schedule it to run every day. It's a gorgeous HTML report of what's going on in your environment, checked against best practices. Like, you really want to use it.
Forums. It all starts off with, for me, the PowerShell community. The PowerShell community is a 501(c) nonprofit organization dedicated to advancing the PowerShell community at large. You're going to find user groups here. You're going to find information about partner ecosystem, all that fun jazz, as well as a forum to answer general PowerShell questions. There's a lot of PowerShell MVPs that monitor it. Microsoft Scripting Guy site. Again, if you've got a Microsoft-related problem, this is where to go. It's loaded up with MVPs and across the entire product group, Exchange, SQL, PowerShell. They're going to answer your problems. And then if you got a VMware problem, this is the spot. The man in the red is going to answer the question within 5 minutes, almost guaranteed. It's a race and nobody beats him. But throw it up here.
How many folks have asked a question in the Power CLI forums and had Luke answer it in like 3.5 minutes? Yeah, he is that good.
So here's the thing, just real quick. A lot of people who have been in this industry for a while, they've dealt with the mailing groups and the chat rooms and a lot of people who aren't really eager to help you. That's not this community. You're never going to get yelled at anywhere inside the PowerShell ecosystem for being a new guy. No one's going to make fun of you. No one's going to bust your balls. They're going to answer your question and they're going to help you.
We're all admins. We've all got problems. There's a cell phone camera slide, right? That's basically everything we just showed you in the other ones.
And then finally, I'm going to toss it out to the SQL guys for coming up with this. If you ever have a SQL question, throw it up on Twitter with #SQL help, and a SQL MVP will answer you within 5 minutes. We kind of have the same thing going with PowerShell and Power CLI.
It's maybe not as formal, but it is monitored, and you will get several responses very, very quickly.
Yeah. Go ahead, make your forum post, and then just throw a 911 out on Twitter. Someone's going to step up and help you out, man. It's one big community. We're in it together. And of course, this was a bit of an experiment. We had to lobby VMware. We thought you guys needed automation tracks. We thought that you needed this and that this was important. We got a bunch of them on there. If you want to see this stuff in the future,
the number of folks in the room tells us that it was important. So if you want to see it again at VMworld, Partner Exchange, so on, let them know.
Fill out that survey. That's the only way we're going to win. So now we'll take the remainder time that we've got available, and if you guys have any questions that we've failed to answer thus far,
any problems we can help solve, come earn a book by stumping the chumps, or all just file out the back of the room, right? There are posters and pins and Power CLI stickers located somewhere along the back of the room. Feel free to pick them up on your way out.
Perfect.
And if you've got questions, come forward. We'll turn the mics off and have a chit-chat.